So how does a true course seller sell courses? Well, it's through webinar maxing. All the people in the thumbnail of this YouTube video have made millions of dollars selling one-to-many. And I've helped some of my clients make millions of dollars selling one-to-many. In fact, you can see the what plaque we just got for one client. We've done over 1.7 mil for him. We have other clients who are absolutely ripping. This month so far, we're at 143K cash with zero following, pacing 200K at 4x return on ad spend for this client, all through webinars. And so in this video, I'm going to show you the exact best practices with webinars that we're using in 2026 to drive these results so that you can do the same. First of all, though, a little recap for the people who have been living under a rock for the past few years. Why would you sell with a webinar? Number one, trust. It is so much easier to make a prospect buy from you when you sit with them in a live room for 2 hours convincing them than them only seeing a 10-minute VSL. Alex Hormozi once told a story. This stuck with me for a very long time about a soccer aid football match where A-list celebrities were getting announced and there was little to no applause. Short-form content creators were announced and there was some applause. Long-form creators got announced and got like, oh, this person's coming on the field, and there was a lot of applause. But when the live streamers were announced, there was monumental applause. There is no better way for someone to trust you, see your value, and then buy from you other than a webinar, simply because something that's live for 2 hours cannot be faked. You cannot LARP for that long. And it forces a lead to spend time with you, of course. So I think everyone is familiar with the 7-11 rule, where a lead needs to watch 7 hours of your content, interact for 11 times with your brand at 4 different touch points. But the thing is, a webinar compresses that big time, because when it's live, it's like they're actually speaking to you basically on a call. And then the second one is, of course, leverage, because a webinar sells one-to-many instead of one-to-one. And as someone selling high ticket, you don't need to speak to everyone who might be interested in your service individually on one-on-one sales calls. As the offer owner, you can literally speak to them all as a group. And the way I like to frame this is, imagine having an email list and having to send out all of the emails one by one, type them out one by one manually instead of all at once. You'd be crazy not to do that. And it's the same principle with webinars. Also, webinars are extremely replicable and scalable, because if you build a webinar correctly and you do it like I'm going to show you in this video, you can run them consistently with cold traffic every week and make a lot of money. So I hope you're convinced. And now we're going to get into it. What does a webinar funnel look like? So I'm going to be showing you this graph over and over again in this video. So we have our traffic, which we're going to cover, then our registration page, thank you page, or order bump page, the nurturing sequence before the webinar event, then the actual live webinar event, then either going direct checkout or booked call before closing and upselling. And then we are going to get into the replay sequence and everything that we do beyond just this. So yeah, I'm going to break down every single step at a high level, as well as show you examples that you can copy from our clients and also the people that you saw in this thumbnail that are making millions and millions of dollars with webinars. So let's get into the first pillar, which is traffic. So traffic can either come from organic content or paid ads. Let's start with organic, although I do prefer cold traffic because it's much more scalable. Organic content is free, so it's always good to start with. So we're going to discuss Shelby Sapp, because she is an organic unicorn, I like to say. She posts reels that show her lifestyle, number one, build trust, number two. Like, this is literally her doing her makeup. It seems like so native, like you're actually her friend, like you're actually there speaking to her. She's telling you about her life updates that communicate value and authority. So like whiteboard breakdown videos, exposing high ticket sales myths, giving value on the business model that she teaches, and then also shows proof. This is literally her in her massive mansion with 2 of her closers or students, whatever, that are making a ton of money there in the video. And all of these different pieces of content funnel people to her webinar. Now, organic can be great. Like, she gets hundreds and hundreds of people signing up to her webinars, but she's also running paid ads because they bring her consistency. And I like to think of organic and paid kind of like a yin and yang. You have to have both of them, and they work in tandem with each other. The better you are in organic, the easier paid ads will be. The more paid ads you run, organic will supplement that and get you lower CPMs. So you need to be doing both. Now, to run ads, though, you do need an offer that works on cold traffic, meaning that someone that's never seen you before would want to buy your offer with the right marketing. So someone who's never seen you before, doesn't know who you are, doesn't trust you, would be interested in buying. Like, if you came to me on the street and said, for the price of $1, I'm going to give you $10. That is an offer that, no matter what, if it was legit, of course, anyone would buy. But if an offer is like, hey, I'm just going to help you, consult you one-on-one and coach you to do something, like, because I'm really cool and I've made a lot of money, that's not going to cut it. So with ads, again, you need to be extremely clear on your ICP, who you are helping, and understand them and their pain points better than they understand themselves. This is absolutely crucial to do very good market research. And how I like to do this is from sales call recordings, from Reddit, and also, of course, using AI. Now, when launching ad campaigns, I've made full videos on ads, but we like to launch with 15 to 20 ads that are in market. So you can think of your market, your total addressable market, your TAM, as this inverse triangle here, where there's about 30% of the market that is never going to buy, 33% of the market that is kind of like a mass market demographic, a 30% portion that is the needs convinced demographic, and a 3% portion that is in market. Now, I define in market as people who are somewhat pre-sold on our offer. Let's say I was selling an Airbnb offer that teaches people how to start an Airbnb business. I would define someone in market as someone who is already interested in starting an Airbnb business. Imagine how much easier it is to sell someone and advertise to someone through our messaging who already wants to start an Airbnb business, get them on our webinar and sell them on our program. It's way easier than getting someone random on the street who doesn't even kind of understand property or Airbnb and try and get them to buy. Now, that's like very, very aware, very, very in market. But there also might be someone who is sold on the idea of property being a way to get financial freedom. So I might say in my ad, well, you know that property is an amazing way to get financial freedom, but what you might not know is Airbnb is actually the best way to do this. And we're just selling them on the unique mechanism, let's say, of Airbnb. Now, that's just like a basic overview of what we do in our agency, how we're getting the results we are for our clients. And remember that there's no magic like fix-all solution for ads. The main thing to keep in mind with ads is their messaging, both visually and verbally. So this is what's seen in the ad and what's said in the ad. And let's say I was a coach selling an Amazon wholesale offer and I recorded ads in front of a supercar. That is just going to attract me brokies. Whereas if I recorded those ads in a warehouse with my Amazon products and I was advertising to an in-market demographic, that would attract more of the right type of people. And this is an exact shift that we made for one of our clients. In fact, he's the one I showed you at the start who's running about 4x ROAS, 200K a month at the moment. Now, here are some metrics that you want to kind of track for ads when you're running webinars. You want maximum $80 CPMs. You want to try and reduce the CPMs, of course, as much as possible. Using creative diversity to do that will help. Aim for above 2% unique outbound click-through rate, over a 20% landing page conversion rate. And, you can get anywhere from $3 to $15 cost per lead for webinars. Typically, we see between 8 and 10 as a very good sweet spot. So that's that for traffic. Now, registration page. Once you have traffic, obviously you need them to sign up. And to get a 20% plus landing page conversion rate, we have landing page conversion rates of 25, 30, 35% on some of our cold traffic offers. You need to have a good landing page. So here's one of ours. You can see we have a headline, a subheadline, an image of the creator. Sometimes we have a video. Typically, we are seeing pretty similar conversion rates between landing pages without videos and with videos. And then, of course, making it very clear that it is a live event. So when it is, when registrations close, some scarcity on the landing page button, 5-star reviews across the board, and obviously a big CTA to register. And this is the form obviously that pops up with their name, email, and phone number that auto-fills from Meta when we're running ads. Now, headline is the most important part of your landing page copy. David Ogilvy says that on the average, 5 times as many people read your headline as read the body copy. So when you have written your headline, you've spent 80 cents on your dollar. So split test headlines is one of the best ways to increase your landing page conversion rate. Typically, a lot of our headlines that we'll start with if we're launching a client is discover X unique mechanism that helped X ICP go from pain to solution without XYZ pain. Those typically convert pretty well, but of course, you have to have good copy and you have to really understand who you're writing to and the types of people that are coming from your ads and your organic content and what actually sells to them. If you make some crazy guarantees and crazy income claims in your landing page headline, you're probably going to attract shit leads. Also on the landing page, you're going to want to show the mechanisms of what you're going to be teaching on the webinars and what you're going to learn. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and of course, a ton of social proof. If you have free gifts and about me section, those are also cool things to implement on your landing pages. Now, thank you page and order bump. Once someone signs up on our landing page, we need to give them the right information for them to show up. So for this client that I've given you the example of, we have, a thank you page, which is congratulations, you've registered for X time and X date. Then we have a video saying, congratulations. Now join the free WhatsApp group, add the event to your calendar, and then check out these breakout videos. Now, breakout videos are FAQ videos that are about 1 to 2 minutes long. And we actually run webinar specific ones. For example, is the workshop actually live? What am I going to learn on the workshop? Can I do this alongside my 9 to 5? A brand's going to take me seriously with no experience. These are all questions that people have around the business model. Some that are actually very specific to the webinar. Like you would only ask this question for a webinar, that handle concerns and handle objections so that we get a higher show rate on our webinar. This webinar itself actually has like a 35 to 40% show rate at the moment on completely cold traffic where we are running an order bump. So like I said, some webinars run order bumps, which are like a 17, maybe even $7 to $97 one-time low ticket offers after someone signs up. And this is number 1 to recoup ad spend, but also to condition your pixel around the purchase event, which will often attract higher quality buyers. So with webinars, the only real problem that we face sometimes is that if you're getting shit lead quality, it can be due to recency bias with a pixel because you're optimizing around a shallow event like lead. Leads are pretty easy to get. If you're optimizing around lead, Meta can sometimes, like if a few bad quality leads come through the funnel and sign up to your webinar with recency bias with the pixel, you can just find more of those people and it becomes like a death cycle. So you can see here with this recent webinar that we did that we had a huge cash ROAS of like 6 almost and a revenue ROAS of 7 on a purchase optimized campaign where we spent most of our budget, even though the cost per lead was $20, which is very expensive. Whereas the lead optimized campaign, even though it got us basically the same amount of registrations, returned only $4,000 in cash and although $12,000 in revenue. It's a crazy difference. So like this is just one example of where we've split tested with low ticket buyers and high ticket buyers. Now this offer only liquidated like 5% of spend, but we do have offers where we've liquidated up to 30, 40, even 50% of the ad spend for a webinar with a really, really good low ticket offer. Now with your order bump, I recommend solving one key problem for your ICP, but you can also add bonuses such as program modules, group call recordings, PDFs, the webinar replay and slide deck. Even if you're going to give the replay away, anyway, you can add the deck as a little bonus to increase the perceived value of the order bump. This is an example example, for the UGC offer we run, so we give away a portfolio template and also a masterclass on how to use it, which is like the key problem for our in-market demographic, like one of the really things that they want to solve, as well as the replay and slide deck, like I mentioned. We use an embedded WAP checkout and Apple Pay, and our conversion rate is actually 10% on this, on people who hit the landing page, which is pretty nuts. So we've gone over traffic, registration, thank you page, order bump. Now let's get into nurturing, because just because someone has registered for your webinar, it does not mean they're going to show up. They have doubts, limiting beliefs around you, your vehicle, and themselves. And via email, SMS, and a propaganda group, you can change that. So on cold traffic, we aim for between a 25 and 35% show rate. On warm, you can see it as high as 40 to 50 to even 60% we've seen. Now we email leads 3 to 5 times a day in the run up to the webinar, and our promotion periods are actually really, really like small. We will not promote a webinar longer than 4 to 5 days out. If it's paid ads, 3 days out is a sweet spot that we see, because think about it. If you register, like if you book a call or you register for something and it's a week away, you're probably going to forget. Life's going to come up. It's just way too far away. So we like to condense that conversion cycle. And if you like are like, oh, 3 to 5 emails a day, that's a lot. Look how many emails Alex Hormozi was sending. I found these in my inbox for his $100 million money models webinar. It was a ton. And he was handling common questions, second layer questions, breaking limiting beliefs, selling them on the business model, the mechanism, explaining things around that, telling his story, telling them what they're going to learn, going over the story, the mechanism, of course, their story as well. And of course, webinar reminders before the webinar goes live. So these are all things that you want to implement in your emails. Also, remember that propaganda group I mentioned that we normally host on WhatsApp. Even in a US audience, we found that WhatsApp has been the best, and we are blasting every single day a ton of messages. We're sending videos of the offer owner. We're sending voice notes from the offer owner. We are sending testimonials in there. We are getting people super excited to actually show up to the webinar. And also, depending on your market, on where it's located, either SMS or SendBlue reminders for the US and WhatsApp DM reminders integrated with GHL can work really well to increase your show rate. Now, your nurturing and your kind of pre-webinar sequence must be congruent. Here are pictures of something you probably learned in maths, which are congruent triangles. If your webinar is promising to teach people you're going to start an Amazon, here's how to start an Amazon wholesale business, even if you're a beginner and you've never done anything before. But all the propaganda they're getting, all the message they're getting, everything after that is like, here's how to scale from 10K to 100K on Amazon. That isn't congruent. People are going to be confused. And like, this is literally the example I just gave. Confused people do not show up to webinars. So make sure all of it is congruent, as well as your ads to your landing page. All of that has to be congruent. And of course, the webinar deck has to be congruent, which is what we're going to get into now. So something I've seen is that way too many people focus on all the stuff we've just covered, marketing, emails, all of that, just to get people to show up to the webinar. And then they completely neglect the webinar deck and script itself, which is arguably the most important part of making significant money with webinars. Because, you know, the whole point is to get them there live on a webinar. Now, a webinar script can be broken down into 3 parts: the intro, the training, and the pitch. And I'm going to cover all of them step by step here. Now, the cadence that we go for the introduction is as follows. And of course, I do not take credit for this. I give all the credit to Jason Fladian. So we start off with, of course, the hook, which sets the tone for the rest of the webinar. Now, there isn't really a best hook for a webinar, but it is in the first 5 minutes of your webinar that someone may decide to stay or leave. So it's very important that you get this right. If your webinar deck is built around a problem, for example, how to scale on Amazon if you're ungated, like that's the whole point of your webinar. You're helping people go from 10K to 100K a month on Amazon. You can dig into that problem in your hook. So many sellers are ungated. Why? What does it mean? But if your ads speak about an opportunity, for example, why TikTok Shop is the best way to make money online in 2026, you need to open with that said opportunity. Remember what we said about congruency. The process of thought that I go through when writing webinar hooks is always answering this question, which is, why should I pay attention to this? I'm a big fan of also front loading heavy social proof at the start of the webinar in the hook, because it kind of answers that question, why should I pay attention to it? But you can't only use social proof, right? You have to have other things involved. Then we get into the pain. Now, I'm not talking about the physical pain of stubbing your toe, or even like berating our audience about the fact that they haven't achieved their goals and causing them pain. It's about making them feel understood by showing them that you know their problems and their pain points, and you understand them better than anyone else. We have to wake someone up, wake our viewers up from the nightmare before we sell them the dream. Now, one mistake a lot of people make with pain on webinars is like being super direct with labeling pain, saying, no, you're this, you're that, you're fat and you can't play with your kids. Instead of saying something like, most people who are overweight report that it negatively impacts their relationship with their family. But fortunately for you, the XYZ system that I'm going to show you tonight is going to change that for you. So be careful with like labeling pain points too hard. Let's say like an example, like on an Airbnb offer, the pain points, depending on like the level of market awareness, if it was more in market, it's like most people who are in property, they save up for years. They try and, save up 30 grand just to get a mortgage on a house. And then they basically trapped in the mortgage. Whereas with Airbnb, it requires low startup capital. Like that's the type of pain that you want to do, instead of saying, you do this, you do that. Then we get into the T section. Apologies if you can't see that too well. Now, this section is simply where you're going to introduce the mechanisms the viewers are going to learn in the webinar. And we always want to focus on the outcome that learning is going to produce. People only care about their outcome. So we're going to use simple bullet points to show what the mechanisms we're teaching and the result that they're going to get from implementing them. So for example, how we use the Amazon, this is like completely like not true. How we use the wholesale method to turn $5,000 investments into inventory, into $8,000 on repeat, and how you can use the same framework to outcompete everyone else on the platform. Like this is like super shit copy. It is just an example of how you're using some sort of unique mechanism, which is like your training section that we're going to get into, and how they're actually going to benefit from it. Then we get into the excite section. You know, what if it all works out? The T section and the excite section are kind of somewhat similar and flow well into each other, because in the T section, you're going to say you're going to learn this, you're going to learn this, which is going to lead to this, and you're going to learn this, which is going to lead to this. And when you put all of this together, this is what becomes possible. Because the excite section is more about the positive, emotional future pacing, where we're putting the prospect in the frame of mind to see what's possible for them after they apply what they're going to learn on the webinar. Now, remember, do not future pace people or excite people around your offer or trying to start like hinting at a pitch. Only tell them what they're going to learn after implementing what they're going to learn or what you're going to teach for free on the webinar. And always use the show, don't tell principle. If you're going to make a claim like after this webinar with what you're going to learn, it's going to be possible that you can work a few hours a day from anywhere in the world and still make a top 1% income. You need to show, don't tell. Like, for example, this is an example of a not very good slide that we used to have where we just kind of had a picture of the offer owner like on holiday, but we have no proof that they're, making a top 1% income. Like, we have to show that when we make a claim like that. And we always want to link back to the result, like for example, the financial freedom coming from the clarity and understanding that they're going to get on the webinar itself. Then position. The position section is where we build more trust into why you, the offer owner, is the unique person who is capable to solve their problem. So it should clarify these questions. Why should I listen to this guy's way of doing things instead of someone else's? Why is this person even doing this? Why are they hosting a free webinar? What's in it for them? Because a lot of people are skeptical nowadays. You want to say, you actually like, why are you selling info? Why are you doing this webinar? Do they even have proof of them or their students doing this? Of course, answering this with social proof and like kind of like the story. How did they get to where they are today? Then we go into the paradigm. This is the last pillar before we get into like the training section of the webinar. And it's a paradigm shift where we ask ourselves, how can we get our audience to think that they've been looking at their problem the wrong way this whole time, to rehook them in before the training? Because you don't know what you don't know. Everyone knows that. And we want to expose one of those things that the audience doesn't know that they don't know to give them that paradigm shift to hook them in. Or alternatively, you can kind of like shift something that they currently believe is keeping them stuck and reframe it. In a broader opportunity-led webinar, it may be like a statistic or data point people overlook. And for example, we're running a webinar for a UK sales coaching offer. And one of the key like marketing angles we're going for is like people in the US earn like 30-40% more than the UK. And with remote sales, you can earn that US level income from the UK. And that's like a huge perspective shift for a lot of people who don't really know that or internalize that in the UK. Or for a more in-market pain-led webinar, you might go for a paradigm shift before the training. Like most people think finding the best products will help them scale their Amazon business, when in fact, they're completely neglecting the basics of building supplier relationships that would eliminate that problem in the first place. You see how when we say, this is something that a lot of people focus on, but this actually like completely removes that problem, that's a big paradigm shift for our audience. So once you've written your intro, you're obviously going to move on to your webinar training section. And most of the best performing webinars we've run and that I've seen run a 3 to 5 pillar webinar training section where each pillar kind of leads on from the next and they're all interlinked. And of course, you need to decide on these well ahead of time. This should be like one of the first things you plan out when you are scripting and writing your webinar. It's like, what is the promise? What are they going to learn? So for one of our offers, which is a YouTube automation offer, we promise to teach them the niche selection framework, which is how to find very good niches, which is a huge problem that people face when they start YouTube channels. The viral video formula, which is, okay, how do you actually make good performing content? And the AI automation blueprint, which is, okay, how do you automate this process with AI? Now, ideally, your mechanisms should be unique, each rolling onto the next with fluidity. So you can kind of see how, okay, niche, content, automation, that kind of works as in, okay, this is clearly the first thing you're going to do, then the next thing, then the next thing. And all of them kind of intertwine into the same system. Now, your goal with the training and the mechanisms should be to show the wow and not the how. And the reason for that is because you should, of course, create belief and give your audience perspective shifts around the opportunity and the mechanism that you're selling. But it is a very fine balance to walk between the prospect believing in the mechanism, but also not making it sound so simple that they could do it all themselves, or giving them enough information for them to actually do it themselves. Now, for each pillar, this is how we like to structure our slides. So we start off with a reframe to show what kind of the mechanism is. Then we go into like the consequences of what happens without it and why it matters. Then we go over how to implement it, give a success example, and then get commitment from them of like, oh, I can see how this applies to my situation. Now, one of our reframes to one of our webinars is about how to not be a commodity as a UGC creator. And we give the examples of like when you're shopping for water in a supermarket, there is super cheap water and there's super expensive water. Yet water is a commodity, and there are still waters that will literally cost 5 to 10 times more than other ones, and people will still buy them. How does that happen? So that's like an example reframe that we use in one of our webinars. Then, of course, we go into what happens without the mechanism. So in one of our other webinars for Amazon, we talk about how data is so important for scale. And well, without data, you're literally just gambling when you're investing in inventory. And of course, why it matters, well, wholesale is literally the only e-commerce model where you can know the price history and sales data for a product before you place a single order. That's like why data is so important with wholesale. How you implement it is through this software, and these are the specific things that you want to look at. Of course, there's way more slides than just one slide for this. A success example of a student, and obviously giving proof, and then tying that into a commitment of like, okay, this student Isaiah has hit this amount of weekly sales and has had like a super high profit margin using this data stuff. Can you see how important X is? Of course, this is a different example from a slightly different point of the webinar, but you can say, how can you see how important this is? Can you see how just by changing this one thing going to have a huge impact on your business or on your life, whatever? And of course, have proof, like I said with that Isaiah example from our client Phil, have proof littered throughout your training that backs up your points, especially in the commitment section. I always like to lead with like an exact example of student social proof of how they use that specific mechanism to solve a problem, and then tie into the commitment. Now let's talk about the transition into the pitch, which is probably the most exciting part of a webinar. First of all, we need to get commitments once again from our audience, saying something like, based on everything we've covered, you know that this is something you should be doing. And then we start to build the gap from where they are now and like basically explain the hurdles that they will still face even with all the knowledge that we've already given them. And I love the 3 pathways transition where we say, okay, now I've given you so much, but when you actually start this, you're still going to face this problem and this problem and this problem. And when people do get started, they normally go down 3 paths. Either they go alone, which is like, either they do nothing, which I'm sure none of you will do. All of you are action takers on this webinar, reframing their identity. Either path 2 is where they go at it alone, which includes this risk, that risk, and that risk, but it is possible. Or they take the fast path, the speedy path, where I help them go all the way. And then, of course, you go into the offer. When it comes to the offer, people need to want what you're selling. You have to have like a really, really good offer, and a webinar is the perfect way to get someone to act through building a lot of urgency and scarcity around a one-time offer with discounts and with bonuses. We use them across all of our client accounts, and you have to have them in every single webinar. Now, one thing I always like to say is that your bonuses for your webinar should be even more valuable than the core offer itself. So, for example, with Phil, we have 8 bonuses, and we could probably value them at like over $8,000 if we did the thing of like, oh, this is worth $2,000, and this is worth $500, and this is worth $500, and this is worth $2,000. And we can justify that because these are things that he's actually sold at that price point. And then, of course, like literally, this is like a slide from one of our his webinar of like the total bonus value is like over $13,000. And of course, we also use guarantees. Also, a little bit of source, physical images of guarantees to increase our conversion rate. When people can actually see the guarantee and they're like, oh, actually, I'm going to get a return on investment guarantee and it's going to be signed. Something like kind of clicks in their head. And of course, risk reversal is so important. Now, we don't normally price drop on high ticket webinars, or we look to book a call, and neither do people like Shelby, Brez, TJR, or anyone who kind of runs B2C webinars. And that's simply because you're going to put people off, and booking a call is just way better. During your pitch, of course, if you're selling something for less than $2,000, you can go direct to checkout, of course. Now, during your pitch, you should continue to handle objections that you've mentioned in the earlier portion of your webinar. Your training section, your intro section, all should be handling objections. And an example that we do on one of ours is like every single person that, has attended one of these webinars, every single client result you've seen today could have found reasons for why they shouldn't have done this. This, and objections that we've already kind of covered, but that we're reiterating, that we then handle through answering them. Well, this person thought this and this wasn't the case, and here's why. And you should always link your deliverables to the specific problems and pain points that they solve. So for example, even your bonuses. So a lot of people struggle with like emailing suppliers because they just don't know what to say. Well, we're going to solve that specific problem with our email templates, which is a free bonus that you're going to get on this webinar. We're always linking the deliverable to the specific problems and pain points that they solve. And then we're also linking that to the outcome. So, and once you have the right emails, you're going to land more suppliers and you're going to make more profit and you're going to be able to take your family on holiday, which I've just said here. So also, a lot of our clients, and also a lot of webinars I see, they don't stay in the pitch long enough. They don't like selling. Like, they're scared to sell. But if you really have a good product and you are changing lives and everything like that, you just have to love the game. You have to love getting to the sale, keep looping to close, keep handling objections before you head into the FAQs and the Q&A, where every single Q&A answer you give. So this is where we open up the chat to everyone there, and we just get a ton of questions. Some will be about the program, some will be about the mechanisms, some will be about the vehicle. But every single answer should loop back to why the prospect should book a call. So for example, if I get a question like, hey Louis, why should you join your inner circle offer? Or I'm curious about the length of time you're in a circle offer. Well, the offer length is 6 months, and this is why, blah, 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 because this is typically the time frame we see for clients like Names to get 10K a month, 20K a month. I see you're clearly interested. So if you haven't booked a call, just book a call. It's going to be completely no pressure, and we're going to see if it's a good fit for you, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, 99% of our webinars that we've ever run have been to book a call, since our clients basically all sell high ticket. But when you do book a call, you need a very good sales process and follow-up process. And I'm not going to leave you guys dry, having watched 25 minutes of this video already. So we're going to go into the process for sales and follow-up. So the first system that you're going to need on a webinar if you're going to book a call is an application page, which will typically look a lot more clean and convert better than just sending people to a calendar or a type form. Sometimes we'll have a type form on our application page. Sometimes we'll just have a booking link. So we'll have obviously a headline, a subheadline, a calendar, or a type form, and then a example of what happens after they book. So you're going to be matched with a strategist, you're going to do X, and of course I'm going to keep this private because it's quite saucy. And then also we go over what's included in the program, the offered core deliverables, and then of course the bonuses as well as a recap, all on that one landing page. And then after leads book in, you're going to need a dialed in confirmation page that includes an urgency or due diligence based first video, then an offer walkthrough document or video that either creates urgency, goes through common questions, goes through common objections, and basically like is a pitch of the offer. Then, of course, breakout videos answering the questions that people still might have after the webinar of what people can realistically make. How much time does this take? How much will this cost me? Can I do this without any special skills? And then specific due diligence videos. We like to do these three specifically where we can, covering number one, the dispute rate, secondly, inside of the offer, and thirdly, third-party reviews, off-platform reviews, things like Trustpilot, Reddit, all of that stuff. And these processes, as well as value dense pre-call emails, which are super important to run as well, ensure that you can hit a show rate of over 70% consistently on cold traffic webinars. And speaking of show rates, your dialers and closers also have a huge impact. First of all, your SDRs must be following this order when they dial webinar leads. They must first dial bookings, then applications, then attendees, from the longest time spent in the room to the shortest time spent in the room, and then people who no-showed your webinar. And they must be, like when they're triaging leads, when they're booking leads in from outbounds, educating them with custom tailored resources, YouTube video, sales assets before their call that are handling those lead specific problems. And of course, the closers should be in a WhatsApp group with the lead where the closers are sending manual reminders. You should not only be relying on like automated text and reminders to get leads to show up to their calls. Now let's go into the follow-up process, because your follow-up process on webinars can literally make you 20 to 30% more money, and so many people neglect it. So first of all, what we do is we have a replay landing page that has next steps laid out clearly for the prospect after they see the replay. So we have like the book a call or the application, as well as social proof at the bottom of the page. And then we also have a post-webinar email sequence for people who attended and people who didn't. So we split them up inside of Go High Level or wherever we're sending emails. People who did attend our webinars have like some pretty like big urgency and scarcity CTA emails. So like you showed up to the webinar, book in here. Before then, like on the third or fourth day of emails being sent to the replay, hoping that they then watch some of the replay and then book in. Whereas people who didn't show up to the webinar are directed to the replay, like from the very first email, the very first day after the webinar. And then on the third and fourth day, we're building more scarcity, introducing the offer and telling them to book a call. Also, something we're testing at the moment that we haven't seen like too much data from is doing an automated encore for your webinar 2 days after the original live to collect more bookings from people who didn't show. So saying we're going live again, and it basically being, the frame is like the webinar was so good 2 days ago that for all the people who didn't show up, I wanted to do it again. Also, make sure that you have a dialed WhatsApp follow-up sequence inside of your WhatsApp group for the webinar. A lot of people make this WhatsApp group, get people to show up, and then they don't use the WhatsApp group afterwards. We want to use testimonials, we want to send them the replay, we want to build urgency, scarcity, introduce the offer, all inside that WhatsApp group to generate more bookings and collect more cash. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how a true course seller would sell courses at a very nice return on ad spend. And if you would like me and my team to help you scale your coaching business, either done with you or done for you, or you're a growth operator watching this and you want consulting, please check out all the links in the description where there is a ton of stuff for you. Apart from that, hope you enjoyed the video. Follow me on Instagram. Peace.